The Gemara asks, Mani Masnisin, who is the author of our Mishnah that says that you can make a sukkah on the top of a ship and it is kosher? The Gemara answers Rabbi Akiva. It's Rabbi Akiva. The Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, if somebody makes his sukkah on the top of a ship, Rabbi Gamliel says the sukkah is no good. Rabbi Akiva machsher. Rabbi Akiva says the sukkah is kosher. So you see that it is Rabbi Akiva. And the Brisa gives us a story. Maisa Rabbi Gamliel of Rabbi Akiva. There's a story with Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Akiva. Shayuboim b'sfina, that they were coming on a ship. Amad Rabbi Akiva v'asa sukkah b'reish hasfina. Rabbi Akiva got up and he made a sukkah on the top of the ship. L'macher, the next day, nashva ruach, a wind blew v'akrasa and uprooted it. Amar Rabbi Gamliel said to Rabbi Akiva, Akiva, heichan sukkascha, where's your sukkah? Trying to show him that this is why I was telling you a sukkah on top of a ship is not kosher. That is the brisa. So you see the Tana of our Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva that says it's okay. What's pshat in this machlokes? So the Gemara explains. Amar Abaya, says Abaya, dekule alma, everyone agrees. Hecha de'eno yechayla lame beruch mitzuya diabasha. If a sukkah can't stand your typical wind on land, loy klumi, then it's not a sukkah at all. On the other hand, yechayla lame b'shena mitzuya diabasha, if it could withstand a regular wind on the dry land, if it could withstand an irregular wind on the dry land, everyone, nobody would argue that the sukkah is kosher. You could withstand a nor'easter, so of course the sukkah is kosher. Ki pligi, where do they argue? Where does Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Gamliel argue? Where it's able to withstand a typical wind on the dry land. But it's not able to withstand a typical wind at sea, which is more similar to an atypical wind on the land, because the sea is always more stormy. So here, this is the machlokes. It could withstand your typical wind on land, but not your typical wind on the sea. Rabbi Gamliel holds sukkah dira is keva binan. Rabbi Gamliel is of the opinion, like a lot of Tanaim, sukkah needs to be more of a fixed dwelling. And since it cannot withstand your typical wind at sea, lekumi, it's nothing. Sukkah is no good. Rabbi Akiva holds sukkah diras arabin. Sukkah needs to be a temporary sukkah. The kivan yechel lame bruch mitzuya diabasha, since it can withstand your typical wind on land, ksheira, the sukkah is kosher, even though it cannot withstand your typical wind at sea. At the end of the day, we focus more on the structure of how it can withstand wind on the land, and if it can withstand a typical wind on land, even on a ship, it will be kosher. The Mishnah continued, El Gabi Gomel, if you have a sukkah on top of a camel, Nasi Semani, who's the author of that? Rabbi Mary, it's Remer. The Tanya went in the Brisa, if somebody made a sukkah on the back of his animal, Remer, Machsher, Rabbi Yehuda place. Remer says it's kosher, Rabbi Yehuda says it's possible. So you see, our Mishnah is Remer. My time is Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason for Rabbi Yehuda? Why is it a problem? Amar Kro, because the pasuk says, Chaga Sukkos Tatzil Chosheves Yamim. You should have the Yom Tov of Sukkos for 7 days. So the Gemara Darshan, Sukkah Haru'uya L'Shiva, a sukkah that's fit for 7 days, Shema Sukkah, that's called a sukkah. Sukkah She'ein Haru'uya L'Shiva, a sukkah that's not fit for 7 days, Lo Shema Sukkah, is not called a sukkah. And since this sukkah is on a camel, or on an animal, and since you're not allowed to use an animal on Yom Tov, so you can't go on the sukkah on the first day of Yom Tov, because of an Issa D'Rabbanan that you might come to break off a tree, to whack the animal, to make it ride. So therefore, it's not a usable sukkah on day one. Since it's not a usable sukkah on day one, it doesn't have a shem sukkah, because it has to be usable all 7 days. The Rebbe Meir, what does your Meir hold? This sukkah also, min ha-Torah, is fit. There's nothing wrong with the sukkah on a midiraisa level. V'rabbanan hu degazuba. It's the Rabbanan that made a gzera about it, but it still fits the gzera sakasuk of a sukkah rila shiva, and therefore it is a kosher sukkah, and you could go on all the rest of the days of sukkah, just not the first day, because of the Hilchos Yom Tov problem.